All right. Happy Friday. I'm so excited it's Friday. It's been a long week for me. So um, I'll introduce Nicole in just a minute, but let's just give people some time to fill up the room. I know it's earlier than usual. Why don't you guys say hi in the chat and let us know where you are joining us from and say hello to each other. Say hello to Nicole. I know
Hi, everyone.
it's early Pacific time. I had to start this an hour earlier because I have meetings I have to drive to. So we did switch the time a little bit, but looks like we've got about 14 people so far. So that's good. Let's see. Has anyone said hi in the chat? No. Everyone must be tired today. Oh, there. Camille says something. Oh, Reagan, I missed you. And then we've got Carrie, Maureen, Roxanne, Nikki. Awesome. I'm
Hi,
really happy
guys.
you're all here. I think you're going to like hearing Nicole's story, and I guess we can just dive into it. So I'm going to give a little introduction, and then mostly how today's going to work is I want to have you guys all ask Nicole a bunch of questions. So before I get too far, I'll just say if it's your first Myo Friday, welcome. Myo Fridays are really just times where I can answer questions. A lot of times Melissa's here. Sometimes I have a guest like Dave or somebody else from the community like Dr. Richard Baxter. Um, Today I have Nicole, who is a new MyoMentor graduate. She graduated from the September 2023 course. So that went September through December. And the reason I asked her to come on was because she has a really interesting story. And she has already treated, I mean, she'll tell you all the numbers, but she's already started a very successful practice, like being a brand new grad. And so I wanted to bring her on because it's easy for me to get up there and say, oh, yeah, here, just do this, do that. And, for me, I've been practicing for I want to say over 10 years, but it's probably closer to 12 now. And so I know that when stuff comes from me, it's kind of like, well, yeah, of course, Sarah, like you can do it. But what about all of us new grads? So I thought that Nicole's story was really great because she literally has only been practicing for like 3 months. And she's seen a lot of patients and she's doing a lot of really amazing things. So I wanted to have her be an inspiration to all of you. And I wanted to give all of you the opportunity to ask somebody who is brand new, who's in a lot of your shoes, and who's just getting started. And I wanted to be able to share her story. So, Nicole, why don't you just start off before you get into like the Myo stuff? Give us your background on, I'm pretty sure you're a hygienist, but where you live, your background, and then how you got into myofunctional therapy and found MyoMentor.
Sure. Hi, everyone. It's nice to be here with you guys. So, yeah, I'm a hygienist. I've been a hygienist for 9 years. I live in Santa Barbara, California. I have two little boys. We have a golden doodle. But yeah, our boys are 2.5 and 4.5. And so, very, very busy, full life right now, especially launching a business. But it's been great. So I was initially introduced to myofunctional therapy about 4.5 years ago. Prior to that, I had never heard of it. And when my oldest son was born, we found that he had a tongue and a lip tie. So we took him to our local ENT. That's kind of like the biggest provider in town for doing releases. And she was like, Nicole, you should really consider. She knew I was a hygienist, and she was the one that encouraged me to pursue myofunctional therapy. Yeah. And so
Wow,
I
that's
know.
impressive.
And so, you know what, Sarah, she was actually, I know you were at Breathe and Thrive. She was the very first speaker on Friday, Dr. Dale Tyler.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, her title was a pragmatic approach to pediatric ENT and airway. So yeah, very lucky to have her in the community as like a referral source and just to work with her. But yeah, so she introduced me to it. And at the time, of course, just had a newborn, wasn't going to like go there just yet. And then 2 years later, we had another son. And so I just actually, what had
Oh,
happened
that was
too,
like 5 years ago then that she introduced you to this, or how many years ago was that?
Yeah, about like 4.5 years ago or so. And yeah, in that time, a lot had happened. I actually got a shoulder injury, and which I still need to get surgery for. So I was really a little stressed out thinking about my future as a hygienist. Like, how is my body going to hold up? I mean, I've been doing it for 9 years. For the first like 2 years, I was working 5 days a week. One of those days was a double. And then after that, it was just 4 days. So I was definitely feeling the wear and tear on my body. And yeah, I was just like, what does the longevity of my career look like? And so I felt a little stuck, and like I didn't have a ton of options as a hygienist. Like nursing, there are a lot of different fields that you can go into. And hygiene, you are somewhat limited. And so it popped in my brain like, oh my gosh, it's like I had kind of set it aside of like myofunctional therapy. So I started, doing some research. And then the more that I started learning, I'm like, oh my gosh, like this
Yeah.
is actually kind of amazing. And how, like, I watched your free on your website, you have like a little intro video. And just from that one video, I was like undone. Like, what the heck? Like, how have I never like learned any of this? And
Mhm.
um, so that's what really lit the fire. And then I decided to take the course. And then, like, literally after the first couple of sessions, I'm like, I'm done with hygiene. I'm going to be a myofunctional therapist. I signed up for the business course. So I did that. And I've just kind
Oh,
of been,
yeah, really quick. So your only
yeah,
myofunctional training was through Mentor. Is that
yes,
correct?
correct.
And that was like your first exposure was like looking on my website. Oh, that's really
Yes,
cool. Really cool
yeah.
story. So did you take the business of Myo course like in January, or when did you were you taking them at the same time?
Yeah, I did them together.
Okay. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's like at the same time. So awesome.
Yeah,
Got kind of a double dose of like Melissa and Dave and their kind of, I mean, they take a lot of the concepts I talk about in Mentor and just really expand on like business and personal growth and confidence and finding your niche and like a bunch of really cool topics. I used to talk a lot more about that in the 12-week course, but there's only so much time, and I had to start separating a lot of that out as we started getting more and more of the clinical, practical stuff that I just thought was so important. So, anyway, I'll let you
yeah,
continue. So, you did both those at the same time, pretty much, which is a lot.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So I did those. And then from there, I just kind of started to game plan for what I wanted, you know, the future to look like. The business course was actually really, really helpful because I don't think that I would have sat down and actually like mapped out where do I want to be in 1 year, or like in 6 months, in a year, in 3 months, in 5 years. And so that was helpful to like actually reflect on, okay, what would my ideal um, business environment look like? What would I want my business to look like? And so, yeah, that was really helpful and gave me just encouragement. They were both really encouraging and offered a lot of support. So I appreciated that. I think that that definitely had a lot to do with my success in the first month. So I started my business January 1st of this year.
Wow.
Um,
I was gonna start
yeah,
to ask, like, what was the first step you did? Like, you graduate from the 12-week course, you finish the business course.
yeah,
What was like the first thing you started doing? Because I know you have a website you'll have to share. Did you
yeah,
come up with your name first, or like what was that sequence? Because I get asked this a lot from
sure.
all of the Mile Mentor students and grads. Like, what do you do first? What's the first step? So I want to hear what you did.
Yeah. So to make it official, I had to decide what type of a business entity I wanted to be. And so because I knew I was going to be 100% in and hit the ground running, I just tax wise, it made sense in my mind. I'm like, okay, I know I'm going to make more than 100 grand in my first year. So I'm going to jump in and I'm going to be an LLC. I'm going to become an S Corp. And so I just like those were kind of things that we walked through the business course a little bit, deciding what we wanted it to be. And so in order to set that up, you did have to decide to come up with a name.
Mhm.
And so my business is Santa Barbara Myo, really simple. Um, and
Very
then,
very searchable on Google. So, my business Faceology, if no one is searching for that, so I think it sounds cool to have like a creative name like that. But trust me, like patients who are searching for myofunctional therapist Santa Barbara, like her name's going to come up. And that's so it's, I think location wise is really smart to do that. So
Yeah, it's been good. And I've seen like my search engine optimization, like my results, go up over time. And I can touch on that, some tips that have helped with that as well in a little bit. But so yeah, I came up with that name. I know that a lot of people, they like, you fully can file for your LLC yourself online through the state. I was so busy with, the programs and my kids and my family. I'm like, I don't have time for that. Like, let me focus my energy. So I just I did it through a company called Zen Business.
oh,
It's a
cool.
company that Mark Cuban's affiliated with, and they were really helpful for me. It was so easy. I didn't have to, I mean, it was one phone call with them and they did all of the paperwork for me and it was very affordable.
How much
Um,
cost? I'm just to give us an idea.
sure. It depends on like what tier you get. I think that I, it was like less than $200, I think for me, or around 200.
I
And they,
probably like $500 for someone to set up mine, but it was like an actual accountant doing it for me. And so,
okay.
but I would say usually it's anywhere from $300 to $600. So I think you got a good deal. That's great.
Yeah, it was
That was
around that from what I can remember. So yeah, I would recommend them for sure. So they helped me set it up. And then from there, I just,
Did you go
was
to the
waiting.
website next, or like did you start seeing patients, or like
Excuse
that?
me.
Because that's always the hardest thing. Like when you're divided between do I start seeing patients or do I build like the back end?
Yeah.
Um,
So I was very lucky. My husband is a software engineer, so he built my website. So I
that's
was
nice.
I was lucky to have that help. But for me, and I know everyone's different. For me, I wanted to have, because like at first I wanted to be going around to the different dentists, different providers like right away. But I wanted to like seem as legit as possible. And I knew that I was going to do those things quickly. So I'm like, okay, I want to at least have my website built as I'm going around. Um, and so
Why
I
don't
had
you
my web.
share your website with us so we can all get a look, take a look at it? Because that's awesome that your husband was able to do that for you. That was like the hardest part for me was the website in the beginning, just getting it to look the way I wanted it. And I was on like a shoestring budget. I don't know if you can.
Yeah, let me see here. Here we go. Let me enlarge this. Oops.
Are you guys finding this helpful so far? I mean, we've just gotten to the beginning, but let us know in the chat if this is helpful.
Okay. Can you guys, is that sharing right now?
That's sharing. It looks great. Oh, I love
Okay, so yeah.
the local like Santa Barbara pictures. That's so cool.
Yeah, so they're just rotating pictures. The footer has like, my socials linked there, all of my contact information, and then some quick links for like information, how to connect. And then up
Who designed
here,
your logo? Did you design the logo or did your husband or
I did my logo just on Canva.
cool. Okay. That's
Yeah.
good. If any of you aren't familiar with that, canva.com is a really helpful design website. I'll put that in the chat.
And a
Uh,
lot of the stuff there that they offer is free, so you don't even have to pay for it.
that's
Um, and
and
then yeah,
it's like simple, it's clean, it's like very to the point, which I think is helpful.
yeah, I tried to make it like that. I have, informational, let's see. Oh yeah, additional information. So this is where,
Hmm.
go into all of these things. And then I have a resource page where if like anyone wants to see like, peer-reviewed articles or studies, I link things there.
That's great.
Um, and then for contacts, you know, just simple. So yeah, it's nothing crazy. I'm going to have a photographer like take pictures of my office and myself so that I can kind of weave them into this homepage, which is simple, but it's been fine. It's simple, but it's worked for now.
Oh, good. Okay, so take us to the next step. You got your website, you got like what did you get? Business cards and
Yep. I got business
letterhead.
cards.
What else did you create? Referral pads. Was that next?
Yeah, so I got business cards. You can order them from so many different places. I ordered mine from Moo, M-O-O.
I've never
Um,
either. See, I'm learning so much.
uh-huh. Yeah, they have a lot of good options.
Moo.com.
Yeah, Moo. I'll show you
That
what mine look
guys.
like.
Yeah, show us
Um,
your business cards. Mhm.
okay. While I'm looking, hold on one second. Let me go grab them. Sorry, one second.
It's okay. Let me just I'm gonna look at the Q&A for you guys. Naveen has a couple, it looks like questions or comments. So let's see. I work with a neuromuscular dentist who is supposed to do a tongue tie release. He's the only holistic dentist in my part of the country, but now that he has gone deeper into studying fascia, he is against the procedure most of the time. So me as a myofunctional therapist, how should I proceed with the therapy sessions knowing that no release is to be done? That's a really interesting question. I know we're just kind of having a segue here. I would try to talk about how releasing the tongue tie doesn't have to be a bad thing for the fascia. It can actually be really good in helping fully release it. If you're doing it like precisely and with care for the fascia, it doesn't have to be a negative procedure. So I think I would, have him look at some of the information on Dr. Zoggy's website. They have some really helpful videos. I don't know, the ones on YouTube are they're older. And so I feel like the videos that they show on YouTube are like much more like the wound is way bigger. Going way into like dissection. Dr. Zoggy's really refined his technique quite a bit. And he talks about how like you really want a smaller wound. You want to be as minimally invasive as possible. So gosh, that's a tough situation though, Naveen. So I think the more conversations you can have around like that's actually not, it's not bad for the fascia to do that. There's some really positive things to release the fascia in the tongue. So if you can approach it from that angle, maybe that's the easiest thing. Okay, I did that question. Let's get back to Nicole. Let's see your business cards and whatever else you
Okay. I was
made.
looking for my new one. I can't, it's in my car right now, but just simple logo. My new one, it just has this, but enlarged and centered.
Okay,
And then the back, it's just, basic information. It says my name, orientation myofunctional therapist, hygienist, and then my address, email,
great.
website, and phone number. So really simple. These are my referral pads. I don't think that's really translating well, huh? It looks kind
Oh,
of
it looks
blurry.
good. I can see it.
Oh, okay.
You can see. That's
Yeah.
awesome. So those look like it's not quite as a half. Is it like a page size or how big is that?
Yeah, so this is 3.5 by 5, and they're a lot cheaper this way. It's just it's I got them from Vistaprint,
Cool.
and it's like a little pad, and they're like $5 each. And
That's
they always
really
have sales. So yeah, that's what I
Yeah,
did for that.
print is a great resource. I'll type that in as well. Um,
So then
so great. Yeah. So yeah, from there you have all your stuff ready. Then what? Did you start going around to dental offices or what was the next step?
yeah, I also started exploring spaces. I know a lot of people do like virtual. I specifically wanted in the beginning, I thought it would be beneficial for me to do in person, especially because I knew that I would be seeing a lot of kids in Santa Barbara. I just knew that was going to be the case.
Mhm.
So I got really lucky with the space that I found. I looked at so many places.
Really?
Um, yeah, and then I finally just came across this one that it's a cozy office. It's cute. So I got a space
That's
and
awesome.
then
Actually, if
yeah,
I
and then
can say something really quick, I think to right now is like the best time to find office space because right now everyone wants to work from home. If you're actually looking for an office, there's some really affordable, really amazing options that like 3 years ago you would, or probably 5 years ago, you would have never found that were affordable. So it's actually really cool. I look at offices all the time and I'm like, gosh, I have my home office, but like it's tempting to go get an office because now like nobody wants offices. So
yeah.
cool.
So I pay 800 a month, and it is my entire, I don't have to share it with anyone.
Awesome.
And it's nice and clean, and that just, yeah, pretty good price for the area that I'm in.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then, yeah, so once I had, I had my filing for the LLC, I had my name, my business cards, all of that stuff. Then I started to go out and network. Um, and I'll just say that, like, I am definitely introverted. This was so far out of my comfort zone. And I will never forget, like, the first office that I went to, I was dying inside. I was so scared. I was like, I felt like I was going to throw up. But I just made myself do it. And I was so proud of myself. And each and every one that I went to,
So
it
tell
just
us,
got
what did
easier.
you go in and say? Like, hi, I'm Nicole and I'm a myofunctional therapist and I have stuff to give you? Or like, what did you?
Yes. Okay. So what I did was I actually called the office ahead of time. And this is what I said. I said, hi, my name's Nicole. I'm a local dental hygienist and I just started a myofunctional therapy practice. Would there be a good time for me to come by and introduce myself to the doctor? That simple. I didn't say, can I meet for lunch? I didn't say, I want to create a
Lunch
referral
number?
provider. A simple, is there a good time for me to come by and introduce myself? And I kind of played around, like, and that was the thing that saying that worked the best. There were a couple of offices that I just like stopped by, and the doctor is always busy. So, the person on the phone, if you say you started your own practice, they feel like, okay, they don't have to guard the doctor. They're like, okay, this is another provider. And then they look at the schedule like, oh, okay, yeah, he has or she has a gap in their schedule around 2. Why don't you come by then?
That's a really
Um,
great technique. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think that'll help lots of people. So,
yeah. And then in the beginning, I brought donuts to people. But then I just kind of stopped doing that because I realized it wasn't necessary. 2 of my top referring providers, I didn't bring anything to because in the morning, I like went and got like 6 dozen donuts and I'd bring them. And then like, I just like ran out of them. And I'm like, well, let's just see how this goes without it. And it was fine. It just wasn't
wow.
necessary.
So, how many offices did you call initially? And I know I'm making you go through like all the little steps, but I think that's what's helpful for
Yeah.
the details. So, how many people did you call? Because that's hard enough to sit down and make yourself have to call and say that. I mean, I remember feeling like dying inside, as you said, just to make the phone call. Like,
Yeah. In the first month, I called over 50 offices and I went to, I think in 1 week, I visited over 20 offices. So
job.
I really, what I did was I started with people that I already had connections with, relationships with. So, excuse me, offices that I worked for, um, any friends or family that I knew had connections, um, doctors that had seen my kids, like literally any type of connection that I had, that's where I started. And then from there, I just started Googling. Um, and it was outside of dentistry, but I will say I've had the most success with pediatric dentists and orthodontists. Those are definitely my
Okay.
top 2 referring providers.
What
However,
when you started going around to the offices, like I guess what helped you, like how did you schedule that? Because I even remember thinking like, oh my gosh, I just spent a full day driving around. I mean, did you end up just driving around all day for a couple days?
oh yeah, I mean, I still am. So in the holes in my schedule now, every single week I'm doing, so actually just yesterday, this is interesting. I had a little personal info. Sometimes I get Botox in like certain areas. Okay. Um, now I'm like, okay, we need to tone that down because I have to be able to,
That's
like show people how I'm moving my face. But my injector, she does, masseter injections.
Mhm.
And anyway, so I did a lunch and learn for her office yesterday. She has her own private practice. And she's like super stoked. She's gonna refer to me. She's like, oh my gosh, I had no idea about all of this stuff.
Yeah.
Um, So yeah, just like thinking outside of the box, I've invited doctors over to my office.
I will say that's the really nice thing about having a physical location is you can invite people to come. And if you have like a cute office that's set up, it just feels so professional. I never invite people here. Like my office, it looks fine, but it's literally outside of my house. It's like we call it a casita here in Arizona, and but I would never be like, "Hey, Doctor So and So, you want to come to my office?" Because it's not like I don't feel like it's that type of thing. But I loved having an in-person office because then a doctor could say, "Oh, I'd love to come see where you work and where you like. I'd love to come see your office." And that is one thing I do miss from having like a real office, not just like my home office. So I'm glad that you mentioned that.
Yeah. So I just have the goal like every week I'm meeting with two providers in person, whether
Uh,
it's a lunch and learn, whether I'm taking them out to lunch or having them come here. And I'm in that growth mindset where I'm like, okay, I'm trying to build up my referral base basically.
you're focusing on seeing people locally, kind of Dave's model where you're like just focusing on your local area, your doctors, and you're not trying to see everybody from everywhere. Sounds
Exactly. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And what I will say too is that I think it's important in the beginning. Because I am so like type A and like want to know everything before I go into something, I knew that I was going to have the tendency to like want to take more classes or want to like spend all of my time studying.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I have to be intentional about what is going to actually like hours in the day that are going to grow my business and kind of manage that with continued education and continue to learn because I want this excuse me to be sustainable. So that's just something to keep in mind too.
I'm super impressed. I'm so happy you're sharing all this. I have one more question, then we'll move on to like, further down the road. But
Sure.
what were you Googling? So what did you Google to find doctors? Were you Googling like appliances, tongue tie surgeries? Like how were you finding these offices to call and then go to?
No, so I was just Googling I visited all of the pediatric dentists and all of the orthodontists in my
Some
town.
people didn't even know what myofunctional therapy was.
Oh no, definitely not.
Okay. Okay. So
Yeah,
Carrie has a good question. She says, for those who didn't know about Myo, how did you explain it to them concisely?
yeah. Um that is, more of a converse like are they open to sitting down to hearing more and you just kind of have to feel them out. Um a lot of the pediatric dentists and a lot of the orthodontists already knew what it was. So I think that's probably why I've had the most success with them. But for example, this is so interesting. So my primary care physician is also a Stanford sleep physician. He owns a sleep clinic in town
Wow.
and he had no idea what myofunctional therapy was. And I took him out to sushi last week for lunch and his mind was blown. He was like, "Oh my gosh, like how did I not know about this?"
Especially with all that
Um
research that comes out of Stanford.
I know. I mean, he's older. He did his training a while ago, but you would think that, he'd still anyways. So just feeling them out. I feel like the people that are open to it, open to learning are the ones that are going to refer to you. I mean, I've had out of all of the offices that I've reached out to and visited in person, I've had only two weird experiences out of so many of them. One of them was this guy, I had set up an appointment ahead of time and just like off from the bat, it was kind of weird. Like his receptionist told him that I was there. I could hear him in the office and he's like, "Oh, this should be fun." I'm like, "Okay, great." So I go in and he's just like flat face looking at me. And I'm like, "Oh, have you heard about myofunctional therapy?" And he's like, "I only send crazy people to myofunctional therapists." And like, but he didn't actually know what it was. He thought it was something different.
Just trying to like
Um,
you. That's so rude.
yeah, it was very odd. That was just him as a person. It wasn't just me, he was just a really poor attitude. But aside from that, I have been super well received from the community, and I will say too, like, more than not, people knew about it. And because airway health is on the rise, we're starting to see more studies come up. A lot of parents are starting, in their parent groups, starting
Yep.
to learn about it, starting to ask about it. And so I think that also was part of the reason why I was warmly received is people do want to be a part of that and provide what's best for their patients. So those are the providers, the people that are like continuous learners. Those are the ones that you want to spend your time with, that will refer to you. Otherwise, if they're closed off, just, don't waste your time.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll move on. I know a lot of people are wondering, okay, so how many referrals did you get? You went around and did all that. Like, did they start flooding in? Did you get no response? Like, what was that next step? Like, because obviously if you go around and talk to that many people, you would hope that a lot of patients start getting referred to you, right?
I was very surprised how quickly they started coming in. They started coming in really, really quick. I'd say I've been getting consistently probably at least like 3 to 4 a week from the different sources. So January, last month was my first month. I did 21 consults, which was great.
A lot.
And
That's such, let me just pause there because the experience of doing that, I mean, you can't teach that in a course. Like going through 21 consultations, like the experience of like interacting with the patient, practicing your skills at educating. I mean, I feel like that was where how I learned so much was from all my early first consultations because you get to read people, you get their responses, you learn how to answer their questions and you get better and better each time. So, did you feel like that was happening too?
so much. Yeah. I mean, even
I just
after my
yeah.
first one, I was so nervous before my first one. And I remember I was like trying to put the cheek retractor in backwards. I'm like, oh my gosh. But after that, it was so, I mean, it continues to get so much better. And now it's comfortable. I'm not honestly nervous at all. I actually love doing new patient consults now. I love the educational aspect. Um, and people are so, so grateful. Like,
I
this
know.
is, I just did a post about this saying like how this is the most rewarding work I have ever done in my entire life. And it is so true. Like, the people that come into you, they, after you go through everything, like, they're so grateful. Like, I can't tell you how grateful the families
Mhm.
are, the individuals are. So it's just, yeah, I love doing exams now.
Yeah. So there's a lot of questions coming in, but I'll just start with, so
Okay.
of those 21 assessments or evaluations you did, how many patients signed up for therapy?
Yeah, 11 signed up. Um,
Oh, great.
and
Nice job.
yeah, it was good. It was a good first month, and I would have had more, but a lot of those have, sometimes it requires other things to happen first, right? So sometimes I see a super
Well,
narrow palette, and they will all circle back. And
yeah,
so
I was going to say that. A lot of those patients, they might start in a month or 2 months or even 6 months from now. And so people constantly circle back. So my next question is, tell us, because there's people asking, how do you structure your consult? But before we get to
yeah,
that, what did you offer a free assessment? Did you offer only a comprehensive consultation? And how did you charge for that? Like, what was
sure.
your structure for that?
So part of what I did when I went around to the different providers, telling them about myself and leaving them my business cards, my referral pad, I told them, and I have listed on my referral pad, that I offer free 15-minute phone consults to bridge that gap. And providers loved that because I told them, I was like, I know you don't have time to spend talking about this. You're busy. Tell them, what you see, and send them to me. I can hop on a quick phone call with them, tell them a little bit about the therapy and bridge that gap, and then schedule them. And so that has been really, really helpful. I would say 80% of my consults are quick phone consults. Sometimes they're 5 minutes, sometimes they're 15 minutes, but it is huge to be able to talk to them on the phone first. That's worked really well for me.
So your goal for that is to, answer their questions. They probably talk about costs. Is this covered by insurance? What are they mostly asking you? And then in addition to that, I know your goal would be to guide them to the comprehensive evaluation. So talk about how that conversation flows to get them to actually come into your office.
Sure. Okay, so I'll give you an example. So a lot of the referrals from the pediatric dentist, I talked to the mom. The mom's like, my dentist told me to call you because she said my kid has tongue thrust.
Mhm.
Okay. And that's really all the info that they
All
gave.
they
And
know.
so I tell them, what myofunctional therapy is, like briefly, oops. Um, I'll say, I ask them first, have you ever heard about myofunctional therapy? And they say no. And then I say, okay, well, it's really similar to physical therapy, but for the mouth and face. It helps to treat, dysfunctional. One of the things that it helps to treat is dysfunctional swallowing. So that I'll use that because that's what they're referred for. And then I might go into a couple of minutes explaining the therapy a bit, but and then I answer specific questions that they have. I ask if like their kid has any trouble with XYZ. And then I say, okay, well, the next step would be to come in for the comprehensive exam. It's really thorough. It's 90 minutes. It's very educational. You'll definitely walk away with a lot of information and insights as to why your child, is having this issue. And then I say, can I help schedule that for you? And it's always yes. I mean, maybe like once or twice, they're like, oh, let me think about it. But if I get them on the phone, they schedule the consults, whether it's then or, a day or two later. So the phone consult has been key.
So helpful. Yeah. Okay, so they get to the in-person consultation. Oh, actually, what did you say you charge for the in-person consultation?
225.
225. Okay, I think that's a great fair price
Yeah.
for a 90-minute thing. So good job on that. I think that's great. So they get in. How do you structure it? That's what people want to know next. So
Yeah.
start off, conversational, then go into photos, or how does that
Yeah.
flow?
So I've kind of played with that. And what I've settled in is, they come in, we do introductions, and beforehand, I send them the medical history, and like, which I use Simple Practice, by the way. And then you can kind of edit like what you want to say. And so one of the questions that I ask is like primary concerns. And so, I can see what their primary concerns are ahead of time. And they can check off if they snore, if they mouth breathe, if they, whatever, XYZ. So they come in, we do introductions, they sit down, and then I have a setup where I have my laptop here that I, take notes on, and then I have a big screen that I just swing around.
Mm,
Um,
great.
and it's facing both of us. It's like on the side of the desk. It's like a little side mount on my desk, and then I can just move it over to the side. And I have a presentation there, and so I say, okay, so the flow of today, what's going to happen is we're going to go over a brief presentation where hopefully you'll learn a bunch of stuff. I'll do a really detailed medical history, and then we'll do the clinical exam at the end. That's where I'll take a look in your mouth, ask you to do different things, take some photos and videos, and then we'll sit back down and I'll, review all of my findings with you and let what I would recommend for the treatment plan.
It's really
Um,
cool. I love that you explain like this is how today's gonna go. That's so helpful for patients because then they're not sitting there wondering like, when are they gonna tell me how much it costs? Or when are they gonna, like they've got it in their head and they know how the appointment's gonna go. And I think that's really helpful. So nice job.
yeah, thank you. So yeah, I go through a PowerPoint. I remember the first exam that I did when I just hadn't made my own PowerPoint at that time. I used the one that you had in MyoMentor,
Yeah,
and I just kind of fumbled through it. And I'm like, I can't do this. I have to make this my own,
yeah,
or
yeah,
else it's not going to work. And so
exactly.
I did use certain things from it, but I made it my own, and that helped a lot. And then after, they always have questions, and they're like, "Oh my gosh."
The
um,
PowerPoint is so helpful just to like show people and talk about it, and it guides your conversation so you know what's next so you don't have to think about it. Like it just happens because the slide, and then you get in your head eventually, like every time you see a slide, you have like the same kind of spiel that just flows out of your mouth. You don't even have to think
yeah,
it comes and you say it, and like it does get very very natural and easy. So
yeah, definitely, yeah. Um, and then I think the visuals help people too, where you can show videos of you know the tongue thrust swallow, or show pictures of what dysfunctional growth versus good growth looks like. And you can show that picture of the deep frontline fascia. That always is like a jaw dropper for patients.
Exactly.
Um, and then from there, I go over a medical history. Sorry, what were you going to say?
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you too much.
Oh,
I was
no,
gonna
that's okay.
just to like you go through that all that, and then at the end, is that when you say, is that when you talk about like you present your recommendations, your treatment plan and costs, or how do you do that?
No, I wait until the very end after the clinical exam.
Okay.
So I do the presentation, the medical history, the clinical exam, and then I say, this is what I see. I have an iPad. I'm showing them pictures, the videos. This is what I see. Um, and they can actually, for them to be able to visualize it. So they have now this information in their head from the presentation. They know what's causing it. And then they see it with their own eyes. They're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know. I've never noticed that. I'm like, okay,
Awesome.
here's the solution. I'm your solution.
Mhm.
Or a piece of it. A lot of times it is a piece of it. Sometimes it does require other referrals. But and then from there, after they've seen it, I specifically don't talk about costs until the end, because they need to have the information and they need to see it with their own eyes if they have these issues. And then I present the finances at the end.
Yeah. So do you first say, this is what I always do is, okay, so the way therapy works is, and I describe like we meet for a minimum of 12 sessions. It could be more, could be less. How does that like give your little spiel to us on like how the therapy works? Because I think a lot of people would like to hear that.
Yeah. Um, so after we've sat down and I've reviewed everything with them, I say, okay, so to tell you what the therapy looks like, I say generally it's 6 months. Sometimes it can be 6 to 8 months. A little, it can depend, but there's only one cost, just like when you see the orthodontist, regardless of how long it takes. We meet every 2 weeks or so. It can span out towards the end a little bit longer, but generally we're meeting every 2 weeks for like 6 to 8 months. And I tell them what's required of them. I say, I will give you new exercises every 2 weeks. You will have to do them in the morning for 5 minutes and in the evening for 5 minutes. So it does require a commitment. I
Mhm.
always say that because I don't know. I feel like it's kind of like, I mean, I'm being honest with them, but it's almost like reverse psychology a little bit. Like they
It's
need to know what they're getting into.
and it gives them the chance to say, yes, I can do that. Yes, I want to do that. Versus
Yeah,
when you say it is a commitment, it is like, I always say it's like reverse psychology, because I always say it's a lot of work. It does require commitment. You have to meet with me every 2 weeks. You have to do stuff at home. And they're like, no, no problem. We could do that. We've got it. Right. Isn't that how they respond? Yeah.
100% of the time. Yes. Yes. Um, and then I break down the cost and I say it's simple. I say it's 2,700. I say, okay, here's what I say. I say it's 2,700 or 2,400 for a pay in full discount. So I don't say it's 2,700 if you need to go on a payment plan. That's like kind of already assumed. I just don't use those words. I just say it's 2,700 or 2,400 if you want to go on a payment plan, or I mean, if you want the pay in full discount. And and to date, I have, I think, 16 starts, and all but two of them have paid in full. So most people pay in full because they want to get that $300 discount. And it has to be like that sweet spot. I don't think that 100 is enough
Mhm.
at 300 is just like, okay, that's a decent amount of money. So I think it encourages people to pay in full. And then they're like, committed to you.
I'm super impressed. So nice job. I mean, that's better than a dental hygiene paycheck, right?
Oh my gosh, the first month I was like, "What? What?" And of course, this is like not why we're doing it, but it is great to have financial freedom, to have and like the hours that I'm working is so much less, the strain on my body
Mhm.
and just like how I feel like I'm helping patients. I mean, it's been so wonderful.
Great. So Carrie's asking, how do you structure the payment plan for those 2 or 3 patients who wanted a payment plan? Do you have it doing auto withdrawal? Are you charging their card? Are you sending them an invoice? How do you structure that?
I am just going in. So within Simple Practice, you can like securely store their card. And then I run it, I give them the option of the 1st or the 15th every month. And then I just run it once a month. I have a payment plan agreement like form in Simple Practice that where I was able to like lay out options. So, and I send this same form to people whether or not they pay in full or they put it on a payment plan. So there's 3 options. I say, um, patient is paying in full, you know, $2,400 for a $300 discount. Patient is paying 1,000 down, and then, you know, however much over the following, what did I put it as, 3 months, or patient is paying X amount over 6 months. So I've only had to do it over 6 months. I would definitely like be flexible if someone was like, we can only make this amount of money work a month. I would be flexible, but that's what I start with. And yeah, so
I think as long as you come across as being like compassionate, like I always would say to people, I want this to work for you. So here's my payment plans. But if that doesn't work for you, just let me know what does. And I can be more than flexible because I know you really need this therapy. I really want to help you or your children. And so I think when you come across as like really caring and like, here's what I normally do, but I'm open to whatever. It's really helpful for those patients who can't afford the bigger lump sum payment. So
yeah, exactly. I put that on my website too. I said
now with
I
pricing, really quick, and then you can tell me what you're going to say. I'm
yeah.
sure people are like, oh my gosh, $2,700. That is probably a very going rate for myofunctional therapists in California and in Santa Barbara. So I
Hmm.
think she's right on par with her pricing. Um, I think, I mean, kudos to you for being brand new and feeling like I'm just going to put my pricing where I know the market will handle it.
Yeah.
Um, because I know a lot of us, myself included, when I was new, I always wanted to charge less. But that's just because I didn't have the confidence. And I think you have the confidence. You're doing amazing. So keep your prices where they are.
Thank you. I mean, yeah, and it is really a lot of work. It's more than just the work that you're doing with them in person. So like I mean, even just talking about new patient exams, that's a lot of work outside of the appointment. I have to send like multiple letters to
Mm,
their different doctors. They're following up with questions. They're called like it is a lot of work. And
all that time that you go around and talk to the doctors and do these meetings. And I mean, all that is your time. And that's time that you're not getting paid for. So you do have to be able to recoup that in the cost of the therapy. And that's, I know it's harder for us to understand because we just see the dollar sign for the lump sum. But oh my gosh, like you've got to be able to count for all those hours. I used to track all those hours and I would try to come up with like my hourly rate. And at one point, I was just like, I'm not charging enough. I'm making like
mm,
$20 an hour. I might as well keep doing hygiene. Like,
oh wow.
because I only wanted to charge like $900 when I first started. And again, this was 12 years ago or more. This is in 2010. So, you know, prices have gone up on everything. But when I was brand new, I didn't want to charge a lot. I just felt like I didn't have the credibility, and the myofunctional therapy world was so different too. But when I
Yeah.
started adding up the hours that I spent like on the website stuff and the networking stuff, I was like, I need to charge more. So it didn't take me long to figure that out. But you do have to realize there's so much time involved and costs involved too. So good for you.
Yeah, and thank you. I mean, 2,400, it's $200 a visit, right? If they're coming in for 12 sessions, like any specialist that you go to, like that's about what you're gonna pay. So I feel like it's reasonable and it seems to be working out well so far. Um, what
Well,
I
we
was gonna
got
say
your
too, really quick,
website. Yeah, sorry.
um, I was just one thing that I was gonna say about the pricing that I put in my website, is I said during your comprehensive exam, you will receive a quote for your therapy package based on an estimate of how many sessions will be required. A pay in full discount is available as our monthly payment plans. At Santa Barbara Myo, we believe that cost should never be a deterrent to someone receiving treatment. We will do everything in our power to find a plan that works for your budget. So there's like that compassionate, you know,
Mm.
note, right? Where I,
And
I went back and I was telling you before, Sarah, that like I went back and forth on whether I should list pricing on the website, and then I just decided not to. That they aren't going to see the value in it until you get them in and can educate them and can go through the consult. So for that reason, I don't put pricing online other than the 225 exam cost.
Yeah, I don't recommend putting your pricing because then people are only going to look at the price and they're not just like Nicole said, they're not going to see the value and what goes into that and why it's so important. And so get them in to talk with you, get that education, and it's really helpful. One last question from me, and
Yeah.
then we'll open up to the students and we'll get through all their questions in the last 10 minutes. But what did people think about insurance? This is always the biggest fear. Were people like, oh, it's not covered by insurance. I don't want to do it. What was your experience with that?
It's always a question. I mean, most people ask, does insurance cover it? And I always say, no, unfortunately not. And honestly, people are not surprised. Insurance
No.
sucks. Like insurance really does suck, especially for like treatment modalities, things like this, specialists. And so they haven't been surprised. I do have two patients that are trying to get it covered with insurance. So in simple practice, you can go in and add treatment plan and diagnostic codes. And so I've added all those, written a narrative. So I've given them everything and then they just submit it on their own. And so I have yet to hear if it's covered. I hope that it is, because that would be great to be able to tell people that some insurances cover it, but it hasn't been an issue.
And yeah, I mean, I just got a insurance letter back recently where they covered like $800 of the cost. So it wasn't the full thing, but
Oh,
I see anywhere from 500, 600, 800. So it does happen. It's getting more and more common, but
oh, that's really
yeah,
good to
is it covering
know.
dollar for dollar? No, but we see a lot more coverage than we used to.
Okay,
Roxanne
cool.
is talking about like I have people telling me it's covered if you see a speech pathologist. It's not always. So a lot of speech pathologists don't want to take insurance. And a lot of times if they're an adult, but they don't have any actual speech issues, the speech pathologist can't bill speech codes. They have to bill myofunctional codes. And then they're in the same boat as us. So it's not, it's not as, grass is always greener as us hygienists think. A lot of the speech pathologists struggle, or they also don't want to take insurance. So,
Yeah.
mhm. All right, let me look at some of the other questions. But Nicole, I really appreciate you sharing all this and getting so personal. I mean, you're telling us about your finances, you're telling us about like, your struggles. And so I really appreciate it. So thank you so much. I think it's
Oh, yeah.
helpful to the graduates. So let's see. I'm gonna stick with the questions that are related to this topic today. So Lisa's asking, I live in a very remote area of Minnesota. Can I be just as successful with less resources? How far do I reach out for resources if only doing online therapy? I mean, I can answer that, and then I'd love to hear from Nicole. I think it's all about, one of the things that I see so much in Nicole is she's confident and she believes in what she's doing. And I think it doesn't matter where you are. If you're if you I mean, it takes a lot of um I don't even know. I mean, takes a lot of nerve, I want to say, to go and make those phone calls. I mean, I remember exactly what she's saying, like the butterflies, the angst. Like, I don't want to pick up the phone and say, hey, can I come talk to your doctor? But then going and doing it, I think if you can get past those like mental mindset struggles, you can do this anywhere. I think those are the things that hold us back more than like, oh, I'm in a small town. Oh, these doctors aren't interested. So, I don't know. What would you say, Nicole?
Yeah. I would say that it really only takes a couple of providers,
Hmm.
consistent providers, to make your business. And so, one thing that I'll just touch on real quick too that I did that I think was really helpful is once you do set up an appointment to go meet with these doctors, don't go in blind. Google them, read where they went to school, find out about them. Do they have kids? A lot of times they'll have a bio on their website telling them about them. So, for example, one of the doctors that I went to, a pediatric dentist, she went to dental school at Tufts in Boston. I went to hygiene school in Boston. I did my rotation at Tufts. So I go in there with that commonality. I see that she served in the Air Force. I thank her for her service. She's you have to go into it thinking about like building a relationship, a friendship, a professional relationship with this person. And then one doctor, he actually let me shadow him for the day. So
Awesome.
any in that you get, even if it's out of your comfort zone, take that, do anything that you can to build that relationship, because those are the providers that are going to be referring to you long term.
Yeah. And maybe you can't charge $2,700. Maybe your area is more around 2,100 or 1,800, but that's okay. You can still, just like Nicole was saying, it's all about the relationships. And I think if you can focus on the relationships like she's talking about, so smart to be able to. I used to do the same thing. I mean, the whole system, we didn't have simple practice and all these amazing things, but I had like these Word documents where I would take notes and write down like their kids' names. I would write down where they went to school. I would try to find exactly like you said, commonalities, because you're not trying to go in there and say, right off the bat, will you refer patients to me? No one likes that. You want to go in and ask them questions about who they are and what patients they are struggling with, and connect with them, and that's it. And it's just about that relationship and connecting, and if you can do that, um hey, you're going to do well. So let's see what else people have been asking, and people are leaving really great feedback, saying they appreciate you sharing. Harry says
Okay.
you may be getting there, but can you talk about how you set pricing, payment options? Okay, we did that. I'm an introverted as well and having so much insecurity about pricing and knowing where to start. Where are you, Carrie? I can give you a pretty good idea. What city? Her other question is, what do you use for lunch and learns? Do you make a PowerPoint? Have you done lunch and learns?
I've done several. Yeah,
Okay.
I've done, I mean, I don't even know, 15 maybe. Um,
Okay. Good
yeah,
job.
I do a similar presentation to what I do for my patients. I just tweak it a little bit, and I add in some extra things. Like, one of the things that I add in at the end is like the ADA recommendation that, as of, I think it's 2018, like,
Mhm.
dentists should be screening for sleep disordered breathing. And so, like, I just tweak it, but it's kind of similar. So yes, I do go through the PowerPoint, and I've just found like the cheapest way to do lunch. So Santa Barbara, we have a place called Chicken Ranch. They do like barbecue chicken, rice, beans. You could do like, party pack. So if you're trying to keep costs low, anything that's not like individual, like, I'm not taking orders from everyone. I'm getting just like a bulk lunch, and it's
Yeah,
usually about 60 to $80 per lunch and learn, but it is always paid off with referral. So you have to think of that as an investment.
definitely. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, people are asking about pricing. I would say, okay, we've got Illinois outside of Chicago, probably around $200 a session. Grand Rapids, ooh, I think that maybe 150 to 200 a session. Yeah, I think those are about right. I mean, it's not really, unless you're in very, very rural, very small towns, then it's going to be more like 100 to 150. But any city with like a decent population and other myofunctional therapists practicing, you should be in the 150 to 200 at least. There's some places where I'd say like LA, Seattle, a lot of California, it's more like 200 to 250 or higher. Um, in those like bigger cities, like even Dallas, I mean, there's so much awareness, and there's so many people doing therapy that it's like, it's totally, people believe in it, they get it, they know what it is. So, all right, we've got 2 minutes left. Let me keep looking at the questions here. Emily's asking, how would you ask for referrals for online therapy? A referral pad wouldn't work, would it? Would you still give out business cards? You can answer first, then I'll tell you what I think, but
Um,
have,
referrals for on, yeah. So, I mean, sorry, are you asking like they're seeing their patients in person, but you're asking them to refer to you
yeah.
for only online? Okay. Yeah, I mean, so just to answer your question very simply, on my website, I have a place that providers can submit encrypted referrals. So that's an easy way to do it. If they don't want to hand but you can still get a referral pad, and the provider can still fill it out for them, and they can just call you. It has your information on it. Um, yeah, what do you think, Sarah?
I mean, I want to say, so this is, unfortunately, I love online therapy. It's all I do, but it's much harder to connect with providers. And I miss that feeling of going around to dental offices and connecting with people in person. And you can't get that in a Zoom meeting with a doctor like this. And so I think
Hmm.
if you're, I would go try to meet your local doctors around you in person. And then even if you're doing therapy online, have that in-person connection with them and just
Yeah.
that you work online. But if you're trying to meet with a doctor from another state and connect that way, it's so much harder. And honestly, they're probably going to be more drawn to the local people who go and connect with them in person. So, um,
Yeah.
challenge of online therapy, but yeah, you can have an online referral system for sure. Okay, let me answer two more pricing. Chelsea, for the east side, Seattle, you're definitely low at 1900. That's probably like 250 a session there. Issaquah, Bellevue, that's a higher priced Myo area. And there's a ton of awareness. So Naples, Florida's a little behind. I'm gonna say that's probably gonna be like 150 to 200 a session in that area. So um, anyway, I don't want to distract too much. We got to wrap it up. But thank you so much, Nicole. I think everyone got a lot out of this. I almost want to like share
Good.
every new grad because I think it's inspirational that it doesn't have to be hard to get started if you put in the work, if you work on yourself, and if you are willing to kind of do the hard things. I really think you can be successful. And those hard things are the last things we want to do, and those are always the things that hold us back. But congratulations to you on like doing those hard things, and you're
Thank
reaping.
you.
So nice job, and thank you
Thank
for sharing.
you.
All right.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure. Yeah. Thank you everyone for coming
Thank you
on. It
so
was nice
much,
to
Nicole.
talk with
I
you
know you
guys.
have a patient now, so I better let you go. But have a great
Okay.
weekend, and thanks again.
Bye guys.
Bye.